Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be removing the passenger side head on this 92 F150 with the 5.0. So if you are not to this point yet, you've still got the valve cover and all the intake still on. I've got videos to get up to this point so far. I'll put them in the link. You can also go to the F150 repair playlist and all those videos are in there too. But the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to disconnect the exhaust manifold. And there's 2 bolts for each port, and there are 4 ports. So disconnect all these bolts and get that exhaust manifold off of there. I've got a 14mm socket. Okay, so I've got the first 2 closest to the front of the engine out so far, and I went ahead and took the front wheel off, and I think it's going to be easier for me to do at least the next one, which is the 3rd one that has the coolant line attached to it, and also that little bar that goes up to the upper intake plenum. So that's the next one I'm going to do. I've just got a bunch of extensions and a swivel here to get to it. So hopefully we can bend this inner fender out of the way enough and just do the rest from this wheel well. So I got the nut off of this stud here. So now you need to pull this off and then take the actual bolt off. So just kind of pull this out of the way while you get the socket over this. Or probably to make it easier, there's another nut back there that holds it up back there. So you can probably undo that one, and then you'll be able to pull this up out of the way a little bit more. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and remove this inner fender wheel well. There's some bolts on the inside here that you have to remove, and up here towards the top. And then there's this, which you'll probably have to get from the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off. It'll make it a lot easier to get to those bolts. I've got a 7mm here. And now I've just got a Phillips. This one and this one here. Real small ones here are 5.5. Okay, so this might be enough to take out. You might not need to take this one out and these up here, which these just go to the charcoal box or whatever up there, I think. So they're not actually holding it up there. They're just attached to other things, but this one is attached to hold it in place. But I think we might have enough room now to get to the rest of the bolts just by taking all those out. So the next one I'm going to take out is the last one closest to the firewall that has that little bracket coming off of it. Okay, so I've got all of the bolts out of the exhaust manifold here. Some of them are going to have an extra nut on the stud that you're going to have to take off, especially on the heat shield here. As you can see, it just tore, the whole thing just tore off. There's supposed to be a hole right here where this heat shield mounts on there, so, and then it did the same thing here, except it didn't tear off. It just span the nut inside there once it's loosened up enough. But so with this heat shield, you're gonna run into that issue. You have to take off the nut and then take off the bolt, and this heat shield will get in the way on some of those, but you're just going to have to bend it out of the way. It's easy to bend, so you can just bend it back to put it back on. So if this is in your way, just bend it to get it out of your way. The next step is to remove the rocker arms and the push rods. When you remove these, you are going to want to keep them in order. So the way I do it is I get a box and I put some holes in it and put the bolt with the rocker arm in one hole and the push rod that goes with that arm in the hole right next to it. So this is just an example of how I've got my box set up. I've got F on the front and B on the back, and on one side I'll put my push rods, and on the other side I'll put my rocker arms. I've got a 13mm socket here. I'm just going to remove these one at a time. It's just this bolt in the middle of the rocker, and then you can get everything out that you need to. Okay, so now that I've got that bolt loose, I'm gonna pull up on this, pull that out of there, and now I'm gonna go put it in my box. So that was the front one, so I'm gonna put it in this front one, and so it's the same for each one after that. So I'm gonna go ahead and take out the rest now. There is this guide thing that comes out with it too. It comes off of this, but I'm gonna keep it with this and just keep it all together like that. So now that I have gotten all those out and placed in their box, I am ready to start removing the head bolts. So there are 10 bolts holding the cylinder head on, and the order is the opposite of this. So number 10 would be the first one you take out, then this one, then you go to the back, go back to the front, back, and then the middle two would be your last ones. For these head bolts, I've got an 11/16 socket. So I've got that one loose. I'm moving on to the second one. Okay, now I'm going to move to the back. So that just happened while I was removing those head bolts. So I guess now I'm going to need a new exhaust manifold as well. Okay, so I'm having an issue getting to this back one on the outside here. As you can see, it's pretty close to the exhaust manifold, or at least what's left of it on mine. So I'm going to go ahead, and since I'm going to have to replace this anyway, and you probably need to anyway, unless maybe you can get a second person to try to pry this forward a little bit so you can get that socket on there, but there's not a whole lot of play in this since it's still attached on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and unbolt these two bolts. They'll probably break because that's usually... Okay, so I've tried taking those nuts off to disconnect the manifold here, but they're not budging, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut the studs, and then I'll replace the studs later. I'm gonna go ahead and take this wheel well out the rest of the way. These nuts up here are 11 millimeter. And of course, the first one broke. So all of those, these four up here ended up breaking off. So if you do this and you don't want those to break, you might think about spraying it with some PB Blaster or something like that. So the last one I've got to do is this one here, which is from the other side. So it's probably that right there. This one on the inside here is an 11 millimeter as well. So now I'm just gonna very carefully try to work this out of here. There's still a couple stuff that have clips on them. So there we go. Okay, so on that one back there, I was able to just pry it out of the way to get a socket on it well enough to get it out of there. My Dremel kept overheating, and I can't get anything else on it to cut the studs out, so I'm just going to deal with that later. So now I'm just going to continue taking the rest of the head bolts out. Okay, so now that I've got them all loose, I'm going to go ahead and take them out the rest of the way. Some of these will have water jackets, so if you haven't drained the coolant completely, coolant will come out. Now we should be able to remove this head. I think there's something else attached to the back of it. Yep. So we gotta unbolt that, and then this head should come off. The bolt on the back is a 13 millimeter. So I'm getting to this from the wheel well with my fancy ratchet. You might have to do it from up top, but if you have a ratchet like this, you can do it from the wheel well. Okay, I got that thing unbolted from the back of it, so now I am ready to remove the head. Okay, so now that I have removed the head, I should be able to identify why cylinder 3 did not have any compression.